Cesar Millan, a world-renowned dog trainer, just experienced a tense moment in the courtroom right after the official sentencing session ended. The incident happened unexpectedly, immediately attracting public attention and causing a stir. Many people could not help but wonder, what happened to the dog whisperer, the person who once brought touching stories about the relationship between humans and pets? This situation has put him under a lot of pressure. So what is the truth behind that dramatic moment? Let's find out right away. Cesar Millan, the world-renowned dog trainer, has just experienced a dramatic moment as his trial officially closed. Having built an empire on a philosophy of control and decisive energy this time, it was he who lost control. When the judge announced the verdict after months of intense debate, Millan could not contain his anger. His face tightened, he slammed his fist on the table and shouted at the prosecutor. To the stunned audience, he rushed to the podium and was immediately restrained by security forces. For nearly 2 decades, Cesar Millan has been an irreplaceable icon in the field of pet training. His television shows have reached more than 80 countries. His books have sold millions of copies, and his calm, confident style has won the hearts of millions of animal lovers. But as behavioral science advanced, more and more experts began to question the humaneness of his training methods, arguing that they could cause mental and physical harm to animals. The lawsuit was not an isolated incident, but the result of years of controversy. It all erupted when a video from Cesar 911 went viral, in which a dog attacked a pig during a training session. The scene sparked public outrage. It was followed by a series of testimony from former employees and customers alleging that animals had been harmed during training. Faced with mounting evidence, the court determined that some of Millan's techniques were not only inappropriate, but also violated modern animal welfare standards. The verdict was a stern warning. Millan was banned from practicing animal training for life, ordered to close the training center he founded, ordered to pay significant compensation to animal welfare organizations, and required to undergo new behavioral training. Notably, he was forced to publicly acknowledge that many of the methods he used were no longer accepted by modern science. Millan's angry reaction surprised even those who once revered him. As he was escorted from the courtroom, he kept shouting that he had been treated unfairly, that he had devoted his life to saving animals, not causing harm. These images quickly spread, becoming a symbol of the heartbreaking downfall of a once legendary figure. Outside the court, the atmosphere was heavy and divided. On one side was a strong wave of protests, with banners condemning the old training methods. On the other side were the anguished eyes of those who believed in him, some crying, clutching pictures of dogs whose lives they believed he had changed. It was an emotional moment, reflecting the struggle between faith, love for animals, and the inevitable change of the times. Cesar Millan's life and career have been a dramatic journey, from a burning dream to the United States, to the heights of global fame, to a final plunge into controversy and irreparable loss. Born in the poor countryside of Culiacan, Mexico, Millan illegally crossed the border into the United States at age 21, with just $100 in his pocket and a burning desire to become the world's best dog trainer. He started out washing cars at a pet store in Los Angeles, then built his empire, becoming an international television star and an icon in the dog world. For Millan, dogs were more than just a means to a career. They were a source of life, a crutch in the toughest of times. But ironically, that's where everything came crashing down. Those close to Millan aren't too surprised by the latest legal drama. Behind the confident, calm exterior lies a deeply wounded man. 2010 marked a dark turning point in his life when his wife of 16 years filed for divorce, leaving a huge void both mentally and financially. That same year, his pit bull, which he considered his soulmate, also died of cancer. 2 major losses in a row caused Millan to fall into severe depression, even attempting death by overdose. On television, the public only saw a calm, in-control training expert. But behind the lights was a man struggling to hold on to his identity. A producer who worked with him said that Millan tied his entire reputation and self-worth to the image of a dog whisperer, someone who could lead animals with absolute calm. When his personal life fell apart, he tried even harder to maintain that professional image as a way of self-defense. Although he returned to work after the shock, according to many close to him, he never really recovered. Millan has become sensitive to criticism, especially when his training techniques are questioned. Although many animal behaviorists have denounced his methods, Millan has staunchly defended his philosophy. The recent lawsuit is the culmination of years of scrutiny. It all began when an episode of his television show captured a dog attacking another animal during a training session. The video quickly went viral and was met with widespread criticism, prompting an investigation by animal welfare agencies. While Millan was not convicted in that particular incident, the public outcry has led to new allegations. One family said their French bulldog became severely anxious after a stressful training session. Another claimed their dog was injured while undergoing rehabilitation at Millan's center. Most telling are the testimonies of former employees who paint a different picture behind the scenes. A former trainer revealed that the dramatic element sometimes took precedence over the safety of the animals. He described how Millan created tense situations for dramatic scenes, then edited them to soften the impact. Behavioral experts have analyzed many of the episodes and pointed out that what was described as submission could actually be a manifestation of stress and fear. The prosecution made a sharp argument, comparing Millan's methods to modern behavioral research. A host of experts and animal welfare organizations spoke out against the repressive approach. And that was the final straw, putting an end to the career Millan had spent his life building. Would you like me to continue with the emotional and thoughtful ending? Advances in the study of dog cognition and emotion have profoundly changed the way humans understand and treat these animals. Leading veterinary behaviorist Dr. Emily Henderson argued in court that the idea that dogs should be below humans in the pack hierarchy is outdated and unscientific. She argued that training methods based on dominance are not only ineffective, but can actually increase fear and anxiety in dogs' emotions that can cause negative behavior rather than address the underlying problem. Throughout the trial, Cesar Millan maintained a defiant stance, claiming he was misunderstood and that the charges were unfair. But as more evidence was presented, including testimony from owners, experts, and videos of dogs showing signs of pain and distress during training sessions, the image of the dog whisperer began to crack. Millan's legal team is also under pressure, as efforts to protect his reputation seem to have lost steam. Under pressure from the public and the courts, Millan has gradually withdrawn from the media, refusing to give interviews and remaining silent through a spokesperson. Some unofficial sources say he has returned to Mexico, away from the intense scrutiny, although there has been no clear confirmation. His sons, who have appeared with their father on television, have only issued a call for the public to respect the family's privacy during this difficult time. Meanwhile, the dog training industry is undergoing a dramatic transformation. Many centers that once followed Millan's philosophy have quietly removed terms like pack leadership from their training materials, instead emphasizing behavioral science and positive reinforcement. Many trainers who were influenced by Millan have now publicly changed their approach, moving away from the use of coercion or deterrence. Professional organizations also did not miss this opportunity to raise public awareness. The American Veterinary Medical Association updated its official guidelines, emphasizing that aversive training methods can harm animal welfare. At the same time, the number of people signing up for humane training and behavior courses has increased dramatically, including professionals and pet owners who want to update their knowledge in a more modern and humane way. For animal protection organizations, this incident is considered a remarkable milestone. A director of the nonprofit organization shared that, despite having to go through a major crisis, the awareness effect it brought was much stronger than decades of propaganda alone. Because in the end, the change is not just in the principles on paper, but in the lives and safety of dogs. The television industry has also recorded a clear shift. Producers quickly created new training programs focusing entirely on positive reinforcement, gentle interaction, and emotional engagement. Some programs even directly highlighted the differences between the new approach and the one Millan used. Many streaming platforms have also quietly removed his old content, replacing it with cognitive behavioral and science-based training material. As for the dogs that appeared on the show, many were taken to behavioral rehabilitation specialists. Under gentle and understanding care, they gradually overcame their fears and learned to trust again. Videos of these rehabilitation journeys spread across social media as clear evidence that dogs can learn, thrive, and live happily without coercion, if people listen and understand properly. The dog training method that made Cesar Millan famous has attracted global attention, but after a controversial legal scandal, the debate over its true value has become more heated than ever. Many experts believe that he still has a chance to make a comeback if he can adapt and incorporate modern techniques such as positive reinforcement without losing his identity. However, Millan's harsh response and denial of responsibility to criticism have made many doubt that he will change. Dr. Miguel Sanchez, a veterinary behaviorist who studied at Millan's training center, believes that Millan has enough influence to lead the community to a more humane training method. If he uses his influence to promote progress, Millan could become a symbol of positive change. Instead, he chose to defend techniques that experts have warned could be emotionally and physically damaging to dogs. This is a shame for many because his legacy could have been much different and more positive. Millan's story has created a wave of deep reflection in the dog community and the training industry. On social media, more and more people are questioning outdated concepts and actively learning about methods based on behavioral science. Courses on nonviolent training, materials on positive reinforcement, and the spirit of cooperation between humans and dogs are increasingly interested, opening a new chapter for the industry. Most notable is the change in the perception of dominance, a concept that Millan once built as the foundation of his training philosophy. Dr. Lisa Reynolds, a specialist in canine cognition, asserts that humans are moving away from the pack leader mindset and toward relationships based on trust and understanding. This is not just a technical shift, but a fundamental shift in how we view the relationship between humans and animals. For Millan, the current moment is not only a personal challenge, but also a major turning point in his career. As scientific evidence increasingly disproves the methods he once championed, his future is uncertain. As he left the courthouse, his defiant statement, "The world doesn't understand my vision," suggests that he has not given up on his approach. But perhaps the greatest paradox is that Millan's downfall has spurred a major shift for the entire training industry. His story became a symbol of the transition between past and present, a reminder that no one, no matter how famous, can stop the progress of knowledge and humanity. What do you think of Millan's violent reaction in court? Is it an understandable reaction given what he stands to lose, or does it truly reflect his character? And has this incident changed your views on dog training? Share your thoughts in the comments and stay tuned for more exciting content. Cesar Millan, once known to the world as the dog whisperer, couldn't keep his composure as he heard the verdict from the court. The moment he collapsed in the courtroom froze the air. Shocked looks and stunned stares filled the courtroom, and the news from the Los Angeles courthouse quickly exploded across the United States, sparking a wave of fierce debate in the dog-loving community. For years, Millan has been an icon of the art of dog training, a role model admired, learned from, and trusted by millions. However, behind the halo, a big question gradually arose. Was he really the expert the public once trusted? What do you think about this story? Share your views in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel to not miss new perspectives and stories that attract attention around the world. Cesar Millan, The man who was once loved by millions around the world as the dog whisperer could not hold back his tears as the verdict rang out in the courtroom. The life sentence silenced the courtroom and quickly sparked a wave of controversy across the United States. Once an icon of animal kindness who had given a chance to countless abandoned dogs, Millan now faced years of isolation behind bars, far from the world he had devoted himself to. For more than 2 decades, Millan had visited thousands of homes across the United States, bringing hope to families who were desperate for their pets. He always believed that with patience, understanding, and the right approach, any dog, no matter how broken or wild, could change. His calm eyes and sympathetic smile have become a familiar and trustworthy image in the global dog-loving community. One loyal fan, Jennifer Anderson, 56, watched every court hearing to show her support. She choked up as she recalled how her mother, who has Alzheimer's and is gradually losing her memory, still recognizes Millan's gentle voice whenever his show airs. For her family, those are precious, emotional moments. "It's hard to believe that someone who has done so much good has ended up like this," she said emotionally. The case stems from a nearly year-long federal investigation that initially focused on administrative issues at Millan's training facilities. But when irregularities related to his finances and international operations emerged, the investigation quickly expanded. Prosecutors have charged him with animal import violations, tax evasion, and misuse of charitable funds. The biggest shock came from the charges related to the deaths of several dogs at the dog psychology center he founded, which made the sentence unprecedentedly harsh. Despite the serious charges, Millan stood firm. He said the dogs were seriously ill and many had been euthanized before arriving at the center. Dr. Maria Rodriguez, a veterinarian who had worked with his organization, testified, "They were abandoned victims, severely injured after brutal dogfights. Cesar knew the risks, but he couldn't turn them away when he knew they had nowhere else to go." One of the most moving moments in the trial came from elementary school teacher Sarah Thompson, 58, from Colorado. With a broken voice and tears in her eyes, she recounted the story of her daughter, Emma, who, after the sudden death of her husband, had become so desperate that she could only cling to her dog, Bear. But Bear, a Rottweiler mix, became increasingly aggressive, and after attacking a delivery man, the family was faced with a heartbreaking decision: retrain him or have him euthanized. "Emma had lost her husband, and I knew she would be devastated if she lost Bear," Thompson said through tears. In a moment of desperation, she wrote to Millan's show without much expectation. But to her surprise, he accepted. He showed up one quiet fall morning, no cameras, no pomp, just him and Bear. After less than an hour, no one needed to say anything more. From that day on, everything changed. What do you think of this story? Please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel to continue discovering other emotional and thought-provoking stories. Thompson recalled that Cesar Millan quickly realized something was wrong when she noticed the family constantly having headaches, while Bear became unusually aggressive. With his usual calm, he gently suggested opening the air vents, then quietly pulled Thompson aside and shared his concerns. Bear might be reacting to toxic gases, specifically carbon monoxide. Without making a big deal out of it, Millan quietly asked a member of the team to call 911. Just 20 minutes later, the fire department arrived and discovered that the heating system in the house was leaking extremely dangerous levels of toxic gases. According to the fire department, if it had been delayed another night, it could have been a tragedy. What touched Thompson most was that Millan did not seek recognition. He did not tell anyone about it, nor did he take any credit for it. He simply did the right thing and quietly continued his work. After the toxic gas was treated, Bear returned to normal, no longer showing signs of aggression. Under Millan's careful guidance, the dog was also trained to become a therapy dog, helping children with psychological difficulties. "He didn't just save Bear, he saved my whole family," Thompson said in court, choking up. Another poignant moment came from Gloria Sanchez, the mother of David, who lived in fear and depression after being attacked by a dog. The trauma caused David to withdraw from his friends, gradually becoming withdrawn and disconnected from the world around him. Everything changed when one evening he accidentally watched Millan's show on TV. It was the first time David took the initiative to say that he wanted to understand dogs. The family immediately sent a letter, and no one expected Millan to be the one to call back. He invited them to the center and spent a whole week with David, helping him face and gradually overcome his fear. Millan once told David, "Fear is not respect, and respect is not fear. When you understand that, you will no longer be controlled by fear." Now David has grown up, become a veterinary technician, and is using his own experience to support children with psychological trauma. Miss Sanchez said emotionally, "He never took a penny from us. For him, seeing my child recover was the greatest reward." Angela Martinez, a single mother, also stood up to tell the story of her son, Miguel. After being abandoned by his father, Miguel became angry and out of control, easily irritable, and gradually fell into negative relationships. The dog Rex, who was a close friend of the family, also began to react to that energy, becoming aggressive and threatening those around him. In a moment of crisis, Martinez did not know where to turn and sent a cry for help to Millan. Not only did Millan retrain Rex, he also patiently accompanied Miguel, helping him learn to control his emotions, be more compassionate and responsible. Thanks to that silent guidance, Miguel returned to school, and Rex became an indispensable part of family life, a loyal friend, protector, and lifelong companion. When those stories echoed in the courtroom, a deep silence covered the space. Cesar Millan appeared not only as a dog trainer, but also as someone who quietly touched the darkest corners of the human heart, mending broken pieces and bringing hope where it seemed to have died. What do you think about these touching shares? Don't forget to leave your thoughts below and follow the channel so you don't miss the next stories. The Animal Control Agency gave him a bitter ultimatum. Rex had to be treated in a short period of time, or the family would be forced to surrender the dog for euthanasia. Miguel, in despair, suddenly learned that Cesar Millan was holding a seminar in town that weekend. Without enough money to buy a ticket, he waited patiently for hours outside, hoping to catch a glimpse of his idol. When the event ended, Cesar happened to see Miguel still standing there. He approached him and learned about the family's situation, as well as the danger Rex was facing. Without hesitation, Cesar did something that moved everyone present to tears. He invited Miguel to attend the rest of the event for free, and more importantly, promised to personally come to their house on Sunday afternoon. That day became an unforgettable turning point. Cesar not only worked with Rex, but also spent time having deep conversations with Miguel about discipline, self-control, and how human energy affects all relationships, even with animals. Mrs. Martinez was moved to see her son, who usually avoided adults and was prone to anger, suddenly listen seriously. His eyes filled with thought. One sentence from Cesar changed him. "Your dog is just a reflection of your inner state. When you are angry, he feels the need to protect you. But if you find peace, he will find peace." Thanks to these positive instructions and philosophies, Rex began to change. But what was even more miraculous was Miguel's transformation. He started waking up early, exercising, focusing on his studies, and gradually avoiding the negative influences that had held him down. Seeing his obvious efforts, Cesar invited Miguel to work at his center during the summer. That opportunity opened a whole new door in his life. 10 years later, Miguel is running a rehabilitation program for abandoned dogs and leading efforts to help children who are struggling with the same challenges he once did. Miguel's work has not only changed the lives of many families in his community, but has also become a living testament to the journey from the bottom up, thanks to a trusting look and a helping hand. For Miss Martinez, what Cesar did was more than just training a dog. It was giving direction to a lost boy, and most importantly, lighting a fire in the hope that a better future could be. In February 2019, in the middle of a severe snowstorm, Winters was watching a Cesar Millan show when the power suddenly went out. As night fell, the temperature plummeted to dangerous levels, and she discovered that the generator was not working due to the heavy snowfall. Worried about the safety of herself and her dogs, she decided to go outside to check on the situation. And that's when she came across a car that had skidded off the road, stuck in the middle of the deserted road leading to her home. What no one expected was that the person in the car was none other than Cesar Millan, who had accidentally taken a wrong turn while in the area for a speaking engagement. After helping Winters get back home through the thick snow, Cesar quickly realized that she was showing signs of hypothermia. With no power, no communication, and the temperature dropping, he sprang into action. With the fortitude honed from his difficult childhood, Cesar led her and the dogs to the barn, the only place where they could still make a fire. The next hours were like a living survival class, Winters said. Cesar gathered hay, built a makeshift shelter, started a fire, and tried to stay warm through the bitter cold night. He arranged the dogs next to her to provide warmth, and talked to her constantly to keep her awake. He talked about his poor childhood in Mexico, about crossing the border with nothing, about dreams that seemed so far away, Winters recalled. I think he was trying to keep me awake so I wouldn't fall asleep, because sleeping with hypothermia would be the last thing I would do. As the sun rose, Cesar trudged through the thick snow to find a cell phone signal. After nearly 2 hours of battling the icy cold, he called emergency services. When they arrived, the officers immediately recognized Winters' dire situation. They said if it weren't for the warmth of the dogs and that little fire, I wouldn't have survived. There are people younger and stronger than me who would have died in the same conditions, she said emotionally. What many people admire is that Cesar has never publicly mentioned the incident. The story was only revealed after Winters' daughter happened to see his picture on the news and contacted his legal team. When asked, Millan remembered Winters in a simple detail: the woman with 3 beautiful dogs. For him, what he did was not a heroic act, it was simply the right thing to do at the time. Despite many touching testimonies about Millan's kindness and dedication, the subsequent trial still did not reach a verdict in his favor. When the verdict was announced, the room fell into a heavy silence. Cesar, who had remained calm throughout the trial, finally broke down in emotion. In his final statement, he choked up. I just want to help. I want to save abandoned dogs. I want to show people that with patience and the right guidance, any relationship can be repaired. Before leaving, he left a message for his supporters. Take care of your dogs. Feed them so they don't have to work for food. Treat them well so they can live a decent life. And never give up on principles. Calmness, determination, and balance are the keys, not just with dogs, but with life. In the courtroom, many people were in tears, including several members of the jury. Outside, hundreds of people and their dogs had been waiting since early, holding signs that read, "Who will help the helpless dogs now?" and "Cesar saved my family." To them, he is not only a dog trainer, but also the embodiment of perseverance, tolerance, and unconditional love. Patricia Williams, 67, a grandmother of 5, said with emotion that Cesar Millan completely transformed her relationship with her once aggressive rescue dog. He not only taught me how to set loving boundaries, but also taught me how to stay calm in difficult situations and be aware of how my energy affects others. Those lessons have not only helped me with my dog, but have also helped me be a better grandmother to my grandchildren. Patricia was just one of thousands of people who sent letters of support and donated to Cesar's legal fund during the most difficult time of his life. He has given hope to people who had given up on their dogs, said Elizabeth Morgan, 59, who traveled from Seattle to attend the hearing with Max, a German shepherd who had been deemed too aggressive to be saved. Thanks to Cesar's methods, Max has not only changed, but has also become a companion to Morgan in his fight against PTSD. Before, I rarely dared to leave the house because of panic attacks. Max was scheduled for euthanasia, but a trainer trusted and used Cesar's methods. Now he is the one who recognized the early signs of my instability and has helped me get my life back on track. Dogs like Max and owners like Morgan are living proof of the profound impact Cesar has had. Despite facing a serious sentence, his legal team remained steadfast and confident in the appeal process. They pointed to numerous procedural flaws, arguing that the sentence was inappropriate for the nature of the case. A life sentence for nonviolent charges related to training methods is unprecedented and completely disproportionate, said attorney Rebecca Martinez. We believe in his innocence, especially on the most serious charges, and trust that the appellate court will review him fairly. In a letter written from prison, widely shared by his family, Cesar expressed his deep gratitude to those who have stood by him. Despite his physical limitations, his spirit remains resilient. Every day I receive hundreds of letters about lives that have been changed by the principles I shared. Those stories are what motivate me to continue to persevere in my mission of rehabilitation, of giving second chances, not just to dogs, but to people. This work is bigger than me, and it must continue whether I am present or not. Those who have been inspired by Cesar are committed to continuing to spread the values he instilled. If you have been touched by what he did, now is the time to speak up. Visit standwithcesar.org to find out how to donate or share your story on social media with the hashtag #StandWithCesar. Together, we can show the world the true value of the labor of love he so steadfastly pursued. Cesar Millan's story is a testament to the strength of the spirit and the ability to overcome adversity. From loss and despair, he rose up, found himself again, and continues to inspire. If you are facing difficulties, remember that there is always a way back to the light. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video to spread this message. See you soon. I have to say we are very lucky. For the past 13 years, the team has been like a second family. Because of that, everyone I work with has a very special relationship with Frank. Have you ever wondered how I get along with everyone? Especially when I am the only woman in a group of men. But the wonderful thing is they always treat me like a sister, always protect me, respect me, and love me in the most sincere way. Over the course of more than a decade on the air, American Pickers has gone beyond the framework of a simple reality TV show about antique hunting. It has become a symbol of friendship, enduring companionship, and memorable journey of three seemingly opposite but strangely connected people. Mike Wolfe, the founder with a burning passion, Frank Fritz, the loyal companion, and Danielle Colby, a smart, sharp woman who always brings a special energy behind the scenes. It is the combination of them that creates a miracle, close and genuine, helping the show touch the hearts of millions of viewers, not only in the U.S., but also around the world. But like any journey, there is always a time when it has to turn in a different direction. In 2020, Frank Fritz abruptly left the show, leaving fans shocked with countless unanswered questions. From rumors of personal conflicts, health conditions, to suspicions of internal rifts, all are just speculation, because the people involved always keep quiet. That silence makes the public even more curious. It was only recently when Mike Wolfe and Danielle Colby unexpectedly appeared at the hearing related to Frank, who is currently living under guardianship after a serious stroke, that the first pieces of the truth gradually emerged. So what really happened? In today's video, we will take a look back at that emotional moment, a quiet but emotional hearing, where the presence of familiar faces made the viewers' hearts ache. It was not a tense or noisy court session. On the contrary, the atmosphere was so quiet that it was suffocating. Mike Wolfe walked in looking tired. His gray suit made him look more silent than ever. Beside him, Danielle Colby, usually sharp and charismatic, was unusually quiet that day. Her hair was tied back, her light makeup revealing her red eyes. They didn't need to say much, because their presence said it all. This was no longer a carefully staged episode, no longer a TV story. It was real life. Two old friends standing silently beside a person who had traveled together through many journeys across America, now struggling with a major life event. That trial was not just about guardianship. It was like a gentle but profound reminder for all who loved American pickers that behind the camera lights are real people with real emotions and inevitable losses. Although now each person has chosen their own path, the friendship, memories, and silences will always remain, quiet, profound, and unforgettable. In the documents filed in court, Mike Wolfe and Danielle Colby are not named as plaintiffs or defendants. They are not involved in any legal dispute. They are simply two people who were deeply attached to Frank Fritz, an indispensable part of the glorious years of his life, and now return, carrying with them the silent torment of things left unsaid. Their presence is not to create noise or attract public attention, but is an important piece, helping the court better understand a relationship that was once sincere, once deep, and now has many unanswered questions. Frank's legal representatives did not prevent them from sharing. On the contrary, they considered it a necessary part to make the picture of Frank's life more complete and truthful, from which the court could make a correct and humane decision about his future. But Mike and Danielle did not come forward immediately. They sat there quietly, as if trying to find the courage to say what had been weighing on their hearts for years. Mike was the first to speak. Not loudly, not in defense, just a deep, slightly trembling voice, but strangely sincere. "I'm not here to justify myself. I'm here to apologize." The words echoed in the courtroom like a slow, heavy drumbeat. Danielle sat next to him, saying nothing, but her red eyes and clasped hands said it all. Silence filled the room. No more typing, no more turning of paper, as if the whole room was holding its breath to listen to something more sacred than any defense. No one had ever thought this reunion would take place in a place like this. Cold, without stage lights, without laughter, without the familiar cheers. But that moment, when all the facades were removed, became an opportunity for real people to face each other. Not in a television role, but in the sincerity, pain, and regret of everyday life. Mike Wolfe, who had traveled across America with Frank to hunt for forgotten treasures, was no longer a television character that day. He was just a man facing the past, the things that could not be returned. "I should have called Frank," he said, his voice low, his eyes looking straight ahead. "I should have asked him how he was, but I didn't." That confession, simple but profound, left many people present that day speechless. Anyone who had watched nearly 300 episodes of American Pickers knew the friendship between Mike and Frank was the heart of the show. They understood each other through their eyes, sharing every journey, every moment. But then the tight filming schedule, the pressure of success, the expectations from the audience, all gradually pulled them apart. And when they realized, the distance was too great to be easily mended. Mike did not blame anyone, nor did he try to avoid it. He took responsibility, that the show's halo had overshadowed the most precious thing, friendship. "I let work take me away," he said, his eyes slightly tearing up. "I let my career overshadow the most precious thing between us, Frank." No excuses, no script needed. Sometimes just having enough courage to admit you were wrong and saying sorry is enough to touch the hearts of others. And that moment, even without a camera lens, is still engraved in the minds of those who once loved the trio Mike, Frank, Danielle. This is no longer the story of a TV show. This is a human story, real, painful, and also full of hope for healing, however belated. No goodbyes, no explanations. Frank Fritz's sudden absence from the show left fans in shock. After just a few episodes, questions began to pour in. Where is Frank? What happened? Are Mike and Frank still friends? Question after question spreading across social media like a wave of worry, but in response to all was silence. Mike Wolfe did not explain. No corrections, just a long, heavy, and confusing silence. In court, for the first time in years, Mike spoke up about what millions of viewers had always been thinking about. His voice was hoarse, his eyes heavy. "I thought everything would be okay, that we would talk again, that everything would go back to the way it was. But I was wrong. He bowed his head, sincerely admitting, I let the silence go on for too long, and that's what kept us apart forever. Mike looked around the room, his eyes landing on an empty chair, the one that had been Frank's. No one was sitting there. He paused for a few seconds, as if addressing his old friend. I used to think I had time, but none of us have as much time as we thought. The words rang out not as an excuse, but as a wake-up call for Mike himself, and for anyone who has ever missed an opportunity to hold on to a fading friendship. There was no blaming, no evasion. Mike stood there, plain and honest, facing himself. Frank and I had differences, both professional and personal. At some point, we just didn't know how to talk to each other the way we used to. And I didn't know how to bridge that gap. Frank shared his feelings in a short interview in 2021. Just one sentence, but enough to make the listener's heart ache. I haven't heard anything from Mike. Not a word. Today, standing in court, Mike did not deny it. He nodded quietly. I failed. I was too busy to do the right thing. I kept thinking I could call him any time, not knowing that one day that would no longer be true. This was not an excuse, but a deep awakening of a man who had lost a friend because of things left unsaid. Mike looked far away, as if looking at some invisible place, where memories still held Frank's image. He was not just a companion on television. Frank was my best friend when I was young, the one who went through years of aspirations and dreams with me. His voice choked. I didn't call him, and now I can only say it here, hoping that somewhere Frank can hear it. Todd Harris, a well-known media expert, commented, It's rare for a celebrity to have the courage to admit a mistake without giving reasons, but what Mike Wolf did today, without excuses, without the veneer of a TV show, was healing for himself, for Frank, if he can still feel it, and for those who loved them. Mike concluded his speech with a quiet voice. I don't expect anyone to forgive me right away. I'm not sure Frank can understand what I'm trying to say, but I have to say it, because I can't live in silence any longer. As he stepped down from the podium, the room fell silent. It was no longer the awkward silence of before, but the silence of the truth just spoken, of pain, of regret, and of a faint hope of forgiveness, even though it was late. If Mike Wolf is the one who steps into the light to face the public and the truth, then Danielle Colby is the one who quietly steps out of the shadows, where she has been standing quietly for 3 years, stuck between two close friends, carrying the burden of silence and regret. In every long-running TV series, there is always a character who is not noisy, but is the silent soul of the group. With American Pickers, that person is Danielle. She does not travel all over America like Mike or Frank, but she is the support behind the scenes, the one who coordinates all the calls, contracts, papers, and sometimes even the emotional conversations. Because she is in the middle of the two fronts, Danielle is the one who most clearly witnesses the cracks starting to appear. When she appeared in court, she was no longer the familiar image with the colorful performance costume. Instead, there was simplicity, like a silent message. Today is not about me, but about something that has broken silently. Frank, her friend and companion for nearly 15 years, is a part of her memory that she cannot forget. Danielle's voice trembles. I should have done something. I saw the distance between them growing, and I kept thinking that they would talk again, but they didn't, and I didn't do anything. Without the need for sensational statements, Danielle's sharing is haunting because of its painful sincerity, the pain of someone who witnessed a friendship broken but was powerless to save it. On social media, she chose silence, no explanation, no bias. But according to those close to her, Danielle tried many times to reconnect the emotional bond between Mike and Frank through text messages, emails, even through mutual friends. All fell into a hopeless void. I feel like a child in a family where the parents don't talk to each other anymore, she said, her eyes distant. I didn't want to choose sides, but I couldn't pretend I didn't see anything. And in the end, I chose to stay silent. That's what bothered me the most. That silence didn't come from indifference, but from fear. Fear of hurting both of them, fear of making things worse, fear of losing what was left. And so, she withdrew. She gave them space to work things out, only to see the gap grow ever more unbridgeable. There had been speculation that Danielle sided with Mike, because she had continued to appear on the show when Frank was absent. But this time, she categorically denied it. "I didn't choose anyone," she said, her eyes determined. "I just chose to stand with the memories when we were a team, a family." Then she pulled out a piece of paper, not to read, but to hold in her hand as a spiritual refuge. "I miss Frank. I miss the three of us laughing, arguing, eating lunch together in the office. Those little things I can't call him up and tell him anymore." Indeed, since suffering a massive stroke in July 2022, Frank Fritz has largely disappeared from the outside world. According to the Quad City Times, he is living under strict medical supervision, with extensive damage to the brain region associated with memory and movement. These after effects have caused Frank to not only lose the ability to function normally, but also gradually withdraw from the connections that once held him close. Danielle Colby is one of the few people who is still allowed to visit him, but even those rare meetings have become fragile and full of regret. Frank is not always lucid enough to recognize her. The distance is no longer just geographical, but a chasm of time and memory. In 2023, Danielle posted a video that was only 30 seconds long. She sat in her car, her eyes red, her face blank. "I didn't want to make this video," she whispered, "but I have to say it. I miss Frank, and I just wish things could go back to the way they were." No background music, no stage lighting, just genuine sadness. And yet the video touched more than 1 million hearts in less than 24 hours. In court, Danielle spoke clearly for the first time about something she had kept hidden for so long, that continuing to work with Mike did not mean turning her back on Frank. "Sometimes you have to move on because life doesn't wait," she said. "But that doesn't mean I forget the people who have been with me a long way." The sentence sounds simple, but in that context, it cut deep into the listener's heart. Everyone has to move on, but not everyone can let go. And in a world of broken relationships, not because of mistakes, but because of silences that last too long, the lingering pain is what lingers. Dr. Laura Gibson, a social psychologist at the University of Chicago, once commented, "Danielle represents the image of the emotional mediator, the person who has no power to make decisions but suffers all the consequences, a role that is silent, often misunderstood, and very vulnerable." Danielle did not cry in court, but her eyes, deep, quiet, and full of pain, said it all. When talking about Frank, her voice choked. "I don't know if Frank can still hear me, but if he can, I just want him to know that I miss him, and I'm sorry for not having the courage to keep the three of us together." The whole room was silent. Many people could not hold back their tears, not because of a great shock, but because of the simple sincerity, because of the sadness that each of us has touched at least once, the feeling of losing something that could have been kept, if only we had been a little braver. Because sometimes you don't have to do anything wrong to make someone leave. Just keep quiet for too long, and you can lose someone who used to be your whole world. After all the laughter, the journeys to find ancient artifacts that have been broadcast, there is still a little-known story. A story of friendship, a silence, and a lingering regret that has lasted through the years. There was no laughter, no witty dialogue, and no editing to lighten the mood. In court testimony, both Mike Wolfe and Danielle Colby insisted that their relationship with Frank Fritz did not fall apart because of any specific event. There was no backstage scandal, no heated argument, and no betrayal as many people believe. Everything happened quietly, silently, so quietly that no one noticed until it was too late. There was no clear moment, Mike shared. There was no fateful day, no milestone. It just gradually changed. The calls became less frequent. The texts were no longer returned quickly. Conversations that used to last hours were now reduced to minutes. The silences, seemingly harmless, became signs of a friendship slowly cracking. Yale professor Linda Hemmings calls this phenomenon silent erosion. When there is no earthquake, but small tremors, constant and unnoticed, are enough to erode the foundation of a relationship. And perhaps that is what happened to Frank and Mike. Mike was busier than ever, expanding the American Pickers brand, organizing exhibitions, meeting partners, and promoting products based on the program. Frank, on the other hand, remained loyal to the simple, familiar things: antique hunting trips, quiet country roads, his old truck, and his morning coffee. Danielle once said, "Frank doesn't like change. He keeps things the same, and that makes him feel safe. Mike never stands still." It was this opposition that gradually created a distance, not because either was wrong, but simply because they were no longer on the same page. By 2018, Frank's health had begun to decline. He was forced to take a break from filming to recover from a spinal injury. While Frank was absent, the show continued, a strategic decision that led many viewers to believe Frank had been replaced. Court documents show that it was at this point that Frank began to feel left out. "I remember when he had back surgery," Mike admitted. "We kept filming, thinking he would be back soon. But I never asked him if he felt left out. Looking back, I wish I had." That same year, several members of the crew, those who were close to Frank, left. Without his familiar circle, Frank began to withdraw. One crew member, who asked to remain anonymous, said that Frank often sat quietly alone between takes. "He used to be the one to liven things up with jokes, but now he hardly says anything." Danielle has felt the change, too. She has shared with Mike her concerns about Frank becoming more withdrawn, but at the time, they all believed it was just a phase, that Frank would bounce back. "We thought he just needed time," Danielle says. "But sometimes believing things will be okay means we don't act, and we miss opportunities that will never come back." Then in 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic hit, all filming was forced to stop. Everyone returned to their own homes, and the small cracks that had been quietly appearing suddenly became distances that were difficult to heal. Nearly 8 months passed after that hiatus, and there was not a single text or call between Mike and Frank. "I don't know why," Mike confessed. "Maybe I thought Frank was angry or just needed some time." But the truth was not so simple. They had misunderstood each other. Frank did not return. No goodbyes, no official announcements, no shared statuses. It was not until 2021, when news of Frank's serious health problems began to spread, that both Mike and Danielle suddenly realized something heartbreaking. They had lost their friend long before the disease appeared. "I realized I had known nothing about Frank's life for almost 2 years," Mike choked out. "It was unspeakably uncomfortable." In court, no one forced them to say anything. But what silenced the courtroom was not the law. It was the truth, stark and unyielding. When we stop actively connecting, sometimes it causes us to lose the people who matter most. They don't walk away in anger, but in silence, like the way Frank quietly exited the screen unnoticed. Frank Fritz, a trusted companion on the journey of American Pickers, was an indispensable part of the audience's heart. Without fanfare, without embellishment, he left his mark with his simple humor and natural sincerity. When Frank was no longer present, it was not just a human absence, it was an emotional void that no one could easily fill. Frank never spoke. He did not write a farewell letter, did not refute or explain to the media. He just quietly withdrew from the spotlight. But that silence was not a choice, but the result of a serious incident. According to medical records, in July 2022, Frank suffered a severe stroke. The stroke left him paralyzed on one side, damaging the area of the brain related to language and short-term memory. From a person who could remember every detail about classic cars after just a glance, Frank now cannot remember the name of the doctor who was treating him. He lost the ability to care for himself, could not manage his finances, and could no longer live alone. Currently, Frank lives under the care of a legal guardian, requiring comprehensive support in daily life. Frank's story is not just the tragedy of a stroke. It is also a reminder of the silent pressures, the mental gaps that no one sees. Mike once admitted that the isolation and feeling of loneliness had been with Frank for a long time. It was just a pity that he realized it when it was too late. Sometimes he would recognize me and smile, Danielle said in court, choking back tears. But other times, his eyes would just be a silent void. Every time I left the room, I felt like a piece of my past was broken a little bit more. Frank is not married, nor does he have children. His closest relative is a cousin who is now his legal guardian. But in legal documents, Mike and Danielle are listed as the two people with the deepest relationship with Frank, not out of obligation, but because of their strong bond over the years. The court looks not just at the financial or professional capabilities of the guardian, but also at the emotional connection. And that's what makes Mike and Danielle's presence so important. They are not there to defend themselves nor to justify themselves. They are there to affirm that Frank will not have to continue on the journey alone. Although the courtroom never heard a word from Frank, his presence still filled the room, in every story, every look. At one point, Danielle couldn't help but remember what Frank had said, before things took a turn for the worse. "We may not work together anymore, but I hope we can still be friends." A simple statement, but now it rang like a heartbreaking echo from the past, a message that was missed. According to a 2021 report by Dr. Harold Simons at Johns Hopkins Hospital, after a stroke, many patients not only lose their ability to move and speak, but also become disconnected from their own emotional continuity. Without the constant and loving presence of loved ones, their memories can also gradually fade in the patient's mind. For Frank, it started a long time ago, not when he was lying motionless in a hospital bed, but with the unanswered messages, the unanswered calls, the attempts to speak and then not. Gradually, he became an outsider in his own story, unable to argue, unable to express, unable to choose, only silence that stretched like an unspoken reproach. People have asked, does Frank want to come back? But perhaps the real question is, do we still have time to make Frank feel that he was never forgotten? For Mike and Danielle, the answer now lies not in words. It lies in actions, not in mending a broken friendship, but in preserving a fragile life that needs to be loved. This trial is unlike any other. There are no arguments, no convictions. This is not a place to find out who is right and who is wrong. This is a place to listen, to look back, to face the things that have never been said. A place where every glance, every breath is filled with regret, because sometimes just a moment of lack of attention can lead to something that cannot be changed. The judge, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and a gentle gaze, could not hide her emotions as she listened to Mike and Danielle's testimony. We often think of the law as dry regulations, applying only terms and rules. But she emphasized that sometimes our duty is to listen. And today, what matters is not who has the power to decide for Frank, but who will always be there for him with complete love. Her words are not just a legal statement. They are a reminder of emotional responsibility, an element often forgotten in the world of showbiz. Because behind the aura of fame, behind the laughter on the screen, there are still real people, with feelings, with wounds, and sometimes regrets. Mike and Danielle admitted their mistakes without blaming the situation or each other. There were no legal changes, no accusations or arguments. They didn't commit to legal terms, just heartfelt apologies, tearful promises, and a pledge that they would never leave Frank alone again. In civil trials, the plaintiffs sue, the defendants counter. But here, the most touching moment came from an unscripted agreement that Frank deserved to be cared for by people who truly loved him. When Danielle said, I'm not here to fight for custody. I'm here because I owe Frank an apology and a new promise. The courtroom fell silent. It wasn't just emotion, it was undeniable truth. The trial also put to rest all the previous speculation about Mike and Frank's relationship, that they were irreconcilable, that Danielle had chosen sides, that their rift was about money or fame. All of that was wrong. The truth was deeper, more complicated, and more human. They were simply people who loved each other, but now no longer understood each other. When the media first reported on the case, many thought it was Mike's last-ditch effort to salvage his image. But after the hearing, the public changed their minds, not because of the eloquent speeches, but because they saw a real person facing his pain. Mike didn't try to appease the public. In the courtroom, he tried to mend a relationship with an old friend. The greatest value of this trial was not the final verdict, but the right to share the truth publicly. In today's society, where misinformation and public relations rule, the rare moments when celebrities stand up and share the truth are not only a way to restore trust, but also a way to heal lasting wounds. For American Pickers fans, the truth is now more precious than any season update. They don't need more episodes. They just need to know that Mike, Frank, and Danielle were a part of each other, a real part of each other's lives. When the hearing ended, the judge didn't rule on who won or lost. She just asked for further medical reports on Frank's condition and insisted that all parties remain involved in Frank's life. It was a decision that was both legal and humane. As they left the courthouse, Mike said nothing to reporters. Danielle just nodded slightly, but their eyes no longer averted. They had finally said what needed to be said, not to seek immediate forgiveness, but to begin the slow process of healing. And perhaps, even though he couldn't speak, Frank felt it too. As the courtroom lights dimmed and the papers were gently folded, Mike and Danielle left the room, eyes red but steps firm. The moment was no longer a painful farewell, but a beginning. The beginning of a new commitment, born of what seemed irreparable. During the hearing, Mike and Danielle made one thing unmistakably clear. They were not here to seek forgiveness, but to change. Gone were the superficial apologies and glossy press statements, replaced by a simple but profound promise. We will never leave Frank alone again. Mike, who had been criticized for being cold and obsessed with fame, declared that he would visit Frank regularly, regardless of Frank's cognitive state. I can't change the past, but I can be present in the present, Mike said. A simple statement, but for someone who has always been quiet, it was a profound change. Danielle, who had long played the role of mediator, was no longer in the middle. She stood beside Frank. I will be there for Frank, whether he misses me or not, whether we can talk or not. The important thing is that he is no longer alone, she declared in court, and her presence was not just a physical one, but an emotional commitment, something Frank had lacked in his later years. While neither of them expected things to return to the way they were, and their friendship may never be the same, what they hoped for, and what the public saw, was sincerity. In a world of pain and lingering emotional wounds, sincerity is the first step toward healing. After the hearing, American Pickers fans flooded social media with touching messages. I don't need Frank back on the show, I just need to know he's being cared for by people who once treated him like family, one fan wrote on Reddit. The comments weren't meant to glorify Mike or Danielle, but rather to acknowledge that sometimes we don't need a perfect ending, just one that shows real effort. The media also responded positively, with outlets like People and Entertainment Weekly calling the hearing a rare example of unscripted public repentance. Forgiveness, if it comes, will come through action, not speeches or PR campaigns. Reconnecting doesn't mean starting over. For Mike and Danielle, it simply means being there when needed. It might mean calling when there's no answer, visiting when there's no recognition, continuing to love when there's no return. This is not a lesson just for celebrities, but for all of us. No matter how much time has passed, no matter how deep the pain has gone, if there is still a single piece of memory, a single spark of emotion, or a single action, we can still find a way back to each other. And in that moment, When Mike put his hand on Danielle's shoulder before they both left the courtroom, it was understood that this was not the end of a television journey. It was the beginning of a human journey, with all its flaws, apologies, and attempts at redemption. The story of Mike Wolfe, Danielle Colby, and Frank Fritz is more than just a difficult television show. It is the quiet tragedy of a forgotten friendship, a seemingly irreparable silence, and finally a confrontation with the truth, a belated apology, and a commitment to always be there. They have overcome the shadow of fame to perform a simple but meaningful act, to restore their humanity. The hearing did not end with a shocking verdict or declaration, but instead with an admission that sometimes the greatest mistakes come not from malice, but from long-term indifference. Yet it is from this admission that a new path is opened, a path of repair through sincere and compassionate action, not flowery. If there is a lesson to be learned from this story, it is a simple yet profound message. Don't let apologies be delayed. Don't let important friends feel forgotten. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you find the content interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next interesting videos. See you in the next videos.